All right, it's 9:45. We'll get started. Good morning. Happy HIMSS Day 2. My name is Doug McDonald. I'm the Director of Extreme Alliances, and I'm really happy to be here with one of our esteemed customers, Colin Summers. Thanks, Colin, for being here today.
Probably a big term. I'm not sure about esteem, but I'm glad to be here.
All right, so I come from a big healthcare background, so I've been on the customer side of the healthcare business for many, many years, and it's been a great run, spending most of my career in the healthcare world, and it's been a really great time. I love the mission. I've been involved with HIMSS for quite some time. This is my 13th HIMSS show, minus, of course, the one that was canceled some years ago. I hold a fellowship status with HIMSS, CP HIMSS, other things, really great organization. When I was on the customer side, I often turned to HIMSS to answer a lot of challenges that we all face. So with that, we'll dive into it. So Colin Summers is the Director of Network Services at OSF. So he controls most of the blinking lights there. And he works at OSF, which is just about 2 hours from here, right?
Yeah, well, we have a little company Mary up here, but primarily central northern Illinois. Yep.
Excellent. So OSF is a large multi-state healthcare system, obviously, 15 acute care facilities, and 2 colleges of nursing. So not only are they a great system, also training our nurses for tomorrow, so it's always great. And you've been a customer since 2014, so a testament to our success with you in OSF. So there's a concept that we've been talking about. A lot of folks at HIMSS, a lot of folks at Gartner are talking about this concept of what we call total experience. And when we talk about total experience, what we're talking about is not just the holy grail, the patient experience, but all the other experience components that go into healthcare. One of the things I think has been missed in years of late is talking about the clinical experience. So HIMSS and Extreme got together. We have this great survey that we just came out with. It's available for access. Really what we asked is a lot of technology, healthcare organization executives, what was top of mind for them. And a lot of things that came up was this concept of staffing shortage. I know my last few alma maters in the healthcare organization, a lot of our beds aren't open because we're missing staff. Colin, you guys are experiencing the same?
Yeah, similar situations for us, yep.
So obviously beds equal revenue, equal the ability for us to take care of more patients. So it's really tough to get over this. So 84% of our respondents that were 15,000 employees or smaller said that staffing shortage on the clinical side is, if not the top 3 of the concerns that they have going on right now. So one of the things that I like to think about is how do we enable, or how do we think differently about making sure that our clinicians are taken care of? So if you're fumbling around with technology, you don't have the capabilities, the bandwidth, it's slow, that's taking away from patient care. So we talk a lot about how can we improve not only that patient experience with great guests and access to great services, but how can we improve that capability from the clinician perspective, because clinicians have a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of healthcare organizations. How do you retain those great staff members? Colin, what are you seeing at OSF in regards to the clinical experience and how as technologists we're meeting some of those challenges?
Sure. So getting access to the network, the external clinicians want to be on Wi-Fi. Obviously, whenever they work, they want their cellular devices to work. They want their laptops to work. They don't want to call IT for any help. So that's always a challenge, trying to make sure we can get them on to that network. And it's a huge satisfier when it is just seamless for them. So that is something we're always focused in on. We've quite frankly run into the challenge where a provider has basically said, the performance of the application I'm using within your walls is unacceptable. Fix it or I'm leaving. So some of you have probably heard that same thing. Fix it, and you try to explain to them, this is technology, it's going to take me 3 months to get a new network connection in, blah, they don't want to hear that. They're like, fix it or I'm out of here. And so that is a big focus, trying to stay ahead of that, trying to anticipate that. They want their apps to work as quick as possible everywhere, and so they're highly critical of that. And so it's an interesting challenge, but it's really important from a satisfaction perspective to give them the ultimate network.
Absolutely. And last thing that we as technologists want to hear that, hey, I'm the radiologist bringing all this money into the health system, and I'm not happy, and I'm going to take my business elsewhere, right? So that's certainly not what we want to foster in our organization. So it's tough to do that. At the same time, when we talk about patient experience, so we have all these great medical devices, we have all this bandwidth demand. Every day there's a new application, there's a new demand on the network. How do you walk the tightrope walk, I call it, of providing kind of that at-home type experience for patients? When you talk about patient experience, how do you do that when you're trying to balance that quality of service and that medical offering, and then you have this Netflix and this demand to do FaceTime and Facebook and all this video stuff? How do you manage that?
Absolutely. The performance of Netflix is one of the biggest patient satisfiers you can imagine, or Xbox gaming when you're talking about the children's hospital we run. So our guest network, we treat it as a production network, high availability firewalls, multiple 100 gig connections to the internet. That's everything across it. Now, its priority is lower than our EMR and some other things like that. But we absolutely need to make sure that if you're a child in that hospital, every one of us wants your Xbox gaming to work. Every one of us wants your whatever show you're working to work. And the people visiting, they want to be able to do work while they're sitting by the bedside, or they want to be able to watch their binge watch while they're waiting on their child or their grandmother. So it's really important, and we treat that network almost as importantly as the primary network, and then we do all kinds of things to secure it and then make sure that availability is there.
That's great. And if you heard it, in 100 gigabit pipes, multiple?
Multiple 100 gig pipes, right, and then we connect most of the hospitals. We're working to get them to 100 gig connection each, staying ahead of the business, because the network, part of the network has got to be ahead of the business. Everybody coming in our building is going to consume data at a voracious rate. I just heard about, a couple of our clinicians saw a chat, integration with ChatGPT. Okay, well, there's more data going out the firewall. And what I can't say is, oh, I'm sorry, a year from now I can upgrade your network. So you've got to be 3 to 5 years ahead of the business. And that includes patients, that includes providers, that includes the core infrastructure, and things like ChatGPT that come out of nowhere, seemingly come out of nowhere. You've got to be ready for it all.
Absolutely. Well, I love the topic. So into the next topic that was really top of mind for all of us, right? Security, no surprise there. 59% of our respondents said that cybersecurity would be their number one spend. No surprise there. How at OSF are you handling some of the security challenges? When I think of the network as a strategic asset, which is something else that came out of the survey, how do you secure your network?
We do all the traditional things. You put stuff on the desktop. You require people to have lots and lots of logins and prompts and re-authenticate, all the things that we love to do. And then the part I control from a network perspective is we do a lot of device isolation. We really utilize fabric technology and isolation. Everything needs to run in its own secure pipes routed through firewalls. And the goal is, if you show up with some new application, some new provider, some whatever, we need to, within days or weeks, at the worst case, we need to get that device on the network, but we need to isolate it so that we can throttle it at a firewall point, we can turn it off. And so taking advantage of all the isolation techniques that are available now makes it a lot easier to do that. And it becomes more of an operational task. So our client device services folks or our storage folks or the server folks show up and we're ready. And it takes us hours to do our part. It's not weeks of planning and all that, because we're ready. We have the pipes, we have the isolation in place, everything's ready to go, and we can isolate that new device when they show up. It's HIMSS. I guarantee next week I'm going to have this long list of things everybody wants to test and fire up on the network, and they want to know why I'm slowing the business down. But putting the proper things in place makes that a much easier response.
Well, there's no shortage of shiny objects here.
No,
Certainly
not at all.
fascinates me. But I always, on the customer side as well, that there was a line around the building after major conferences to say, hey, we've got the next greatest application, right? Another IoT device, another device that's happening. So part of the IoT shortages, and you talked a little bit about, or hinted about, the automation piece. Can you talk a little bit about the fabric capabilities that you're using to streamline some of those operations?
Sure. So isolation is really important. We want to segment everything as granularly as possible without too much overhead, because the nightmare of manually turning ports on and off is overwhelming to your IT staff. So using automation, we now profile all the devices that are coming in. Ideally, we use certificates. Sometimes we have to go down to the MAC level, but the idea is the device shows up, whether it's on the wireless network or you plug it into any port anywhere in OSF, we instantly recognize that device and you have access to everything you want, and we've completely isolated you. So if you bring your OSF-owned laptop into a location and you plug it into the wall or you're on wireless, we give you everything you need. If you show up with the Xbox, it only connects to the internet. And we don't care where you plug it in because we can't predict where somebody's going to show up across the 140 locations across most of the state of Illinois. So that's really what we do with the automation. Is it's all about the first time we spend some work figuring out how that thing's going to work and how you authenticate. After that, whoever owns that device just plugs it in wherever and it works.
That's excellent. That's excellent. That brings us to the next topic, what I think talks about IT shortages. So as I discussed, everyone's concerned about having less staff. One of the things that we talk about at Extreme is how do we simplify the network, just like you're talking about? How do you automate capabilities on the network so you don't have to have PhDs in networking to do every single thing? You don't have to have, perhaps you move to smart hands to plug these devices in once you figure it all out. In the survey, there was a discussion about IT shortages, and you look at the staffing challenges, and we have a lot of vertical pressure, I think, because let's face it, it takes a special kind of person to come in every day and support that 24/7 by 365 network. I know I spent many holidays, I counted down the ball in a data center a couple times. Like, it's just the nature of the business. And I talked to my colleagues in the stadium business. They're like, oh, we got a game in 2 weeks. We're going to rip apart this network and we're going to do these things. I always used to joke around that in healthcare, you're basically changing out the engine while the airplane is flying at all times. So when we circle around to talk about IT shortages and some of the technical debt, what are you seeing from the perspective of managing this concept of technical debt? Obviously, in the pandemic, there's a lot of belt tightening, a lot of budget constraints. How do you at OSF manage to keep some of that older legacy equipment out of the infrastructure that could impact daily operations? How do you manage that?
Sure. So a lot of that goes back to the automation we talked about. Once the automation is in place, the staff that's needed to maintain a lot of that goes down. I don't have to have some network genius at every location to figure out how to bring something up. I need somebody who is competent, capable, and has access, and they can plug the device in. The automation also protects us in the closet, so if a device fails, we can direct almost anybody in that facility to move the cable from one switch to the other, and because of automation and the isolation, it will just come back up. So that helps a lot from a staffing perspective. You go back 6 years ago, and every time there's an outage, I'm sending network people all across the state of Illinois to swap out a switch. And now I can take pretty much anybody, and we have in clinics walked a nurse practitioner or the front office person, like, start up your phone, you're going to unplug the cable and you're going to plug it in. Because of the automation of that, we know we're safe. We know they aren't going to bring down the network. The old world, you plug it into the wrong port, they're hard-coded, and all of a sudden there's a loop in the network. Next thing you know, the internet's down, right? And because some simple network patch. So automation really helps a lot. It's a bubble of work at the beginning, but after it's really operationalized. It makes it much easier to respond.
So I talk a lot about mean time to resolution, that time it takes when there is, not if, to the business an impact from a technology system. So it sounds like your mean time to resolution, because of what you have configured from an inherent architecture perspective, is really helping to achieve that.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to, once again, we don't have to spend as much time thinking about it or what it is. We can just direct people very quickly to the red cables are the most important. Move them to a switch that's live. We'll show up and we'll swap the switch out later, and we can move it back when it's appropriate. Minimum downtime, minimum effort to get there.
That's excellent. Kind of every administrator's dream, right?
Yeah.
So just touching really quick on just, you have a modernized architecture, and what we've talked about in our survey is the concept of this strategic access, and IT being kind of the lifeblood, or kind of that centralized part of the nervous system, that heart, if you will, of the organization. A lot of organizations have spent a lot of investment in applications, and sometimes the IT infrastructure, kind of that plumbing, may be overlooked. When you look at kind of the utility, if you look at a utility like water, if the water is out at a facility, obviously bathroom facilities are impacted. We kind of think the same about the network. Can you share some insight at OSF how you think about the network as a strategic asset?
Sure. We talk about it just like in a hospital, right? You talk about if the plumbing's not working, you can't deliver clinical care. If the electricity is not working, you can't deliver clinical care. So they've done things to make sure that's available. We treat the network in a very similar manner. It is a critical piece of the infrastructure. We have lots of conversations around that. We're able to show as we modernize the network, as we do automation, that our outages don't necessarily disappear. We'd all love if they did, but the mean time to resolution is significantly better than when it happened before. And then we talk a lot about resiliency and redundancy, not just having multiple switches in the network, but making sure there's multiple paths out of the closet. And we do it in an iterative method, because we know the hospitals can't afford to upgrade every piece of fiber and copper in a building all at once. So we start in the 7x24 closets, as we call it. We work our way back and we slowly go around. And then get ourselves into a tech refresh mode so that instead of every 5 or 7 years we're uplifting the whole thing, we can just slowly work through the environment. And because of the automation, it's really easy. Move everything to the new switch, and we just keep going as we upgrade the hardware.
Colin, would it be fair to talk about, we used to talk about painting the bridge. So by the time we got done painting the bridge or doing those refreshes, it was time to paint the bridge again. Would that fit for your organization as well?
Absolutely. And then, of course, there's always the ask to stretch that out a bit, see if you can let the paint peel a little bit, stretch out the dollars a little bit further. And so that's really why we try to get to that tech refresh cycle, reduce that. It's a known cost, it's a known investment. And then utilizing all the isolation and the automation, it's a fairly easy process to keep going. And obviously there are times where we have to pause and slow down, and then we can catch up, in some manners, as long as we don't let it get away from us.
Sure. Well, we're coming up on time, so you won't hear this much at HIMSS, but we have our booth, which is a few steps away over to the left. It's 4329. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have about this great technology that Colin shared with us. We have a number of different demos there, all sorts of giveaways, the standardized stuff. I'd like to thank you for joining us, and Colin, thank you for being such a great customer and being here with us today.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.